Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a genuinely massive, age-old dilemma. We are going to explore how we can fully participate in the material world, building economies, engaging in politics, and just living our daily lives without somehow losing our spiritual consciousness along the way.
So, the crucial point we're starting with is this provocative question. How exactly do we build a just, functioning society without letting our spiritual essence get completely swallowed up by the material world? Is it even possible to balance the two, or are they just destined to be at war with one another forever? The stakes of this historical and philosophical topic really couldn't be any higher.
Okay, let's map out our roadmap really quick. First, we'll unpack materialism versus spirituality. 2, Tazkia as the root of societal change. 3, the prophet human. 4, the rule of no harm. And finally, 5, Jesus and final justice.
All right, let's dive into Section 1, Materialism versus Spirituality.
To really understand this, we can look at how the 14th century philosopher Ibn Taymiyyah broke down these two opposite extremes, which, as he pointed out, both ultimately fail to achieve full human consciousness. On one side, you have what's called the Western bodily intellect. This focuses heavily on the senses and worldly reason, but it often entirely neglects the spirit. It results in a kind of material monism, where only the physical stuff is deemed real. But then, on the complete opposite side, we have the Eastern spirit intellect. This focuses intensely on silent meditation and spiritual dissolution, but it often completely neglects the body and the physical world. Both paths literally leave a critical piece of the human equation behind.
And this brings us to the Arabic and Islamic alternative, a fascinating concept known as Barzakh. Now, don't think of Barzakh as just some mathematical compromise in the middle. It's actually more like the summit of a mountain that towers way above both extremes. It's this dynamic interaction uniting both poles, the body and the spirit, in an ascending harmony. It doesn't erase or dominate either side. Instead, it acts as a universal scale and cognitive method where neither the physical nor the spiritual pole is neglected. You are fully present in the world, doing the work, yet entirely anchored to the divine.
Moving right along to Section 2, Tazkia, and how it is the true root of societal change.
This balanced mental evolution actually develops through 4 distinct stages. Step 1 is submitting to God, or Islam. This is a psychological stance where you actively transcend your own ego. Step 2 is embodying the truth, called Iman. Step 3 is the steadfast affirming of that truth, Ihsan, where you reach a state of deep, unshakable certainty. And finally, the absolute highest peak, receiving revelation or inspiration, known as prophethood. What's really fascinating here is how physical practices are used to drive this mental evolution. Take the physical act of prostration in daily prayer, for example. It actively trains the mind to hear the truth and then physically humbles the ego right before it.
But here's the thing. Tazkia isn't just about praying on a mountaintop. Let's look at the actual practical tools for this self-reform. Travel is a massive one. It completely removes your social pretense and reveals your true character when you're out of your comfort zone. Then there's non-local commerce and trade. Getting out there and doing business strengthens your courage, your self-confidence, and your essential skill of reading people. And of course, daily prayer, which beautifully combines your regular biological rhythm with complete spiritual presence. By building character through these gritty, everyday actions, you realize that individual self-reform is the absolute prerequisite for any real lasting societal change.
Which perfectly sets up Section 3, the prophet human.
The Prophet Muhammad serves as the optimal historical embodiment of this full Barzakhian consciousness we've been talking about. He didn't lock himself away in a monastery somewhere. In fact, he completely avoided monasticism. Instead, he perfectly combined messy worldly affairs like trade, raising a family, warfare, and running a judiciary with an uninterrupted spiritual presence. He was fully engaged in the dirt and grit of building a society, yet completely connected to the divine the entire time.
We can see this super clearly by tracing the timeline of his early ministry in Mecca, which really demonstrates how personal self-reform incrementally built a massive, diverse societal movement. It started with a 3-year personal invitation, basically an elite movement of close thinkers. This then grew into a 4-year public invitation, forming a broader civil movement. Next came a 3-year general invitation to the wider tribes, eventually culminating in 3 years of severe personal persecution. That persecution is what ultimately forced the establishment of a full political project. Now, in this framework, governance was viewed not as some glorious prize to be won, but as a calculated risk, essentially a necessary surgery to prevent larger societal harms. And it was actually during this time he made a profound political prophecy about the 5 stages of governance humanity would experience, starting with prophethood, moving to a khilafah on the precepts of prophethood, then turning into kingship, descending into despotism, before finally returning to a just khilafah.
Let's look at the ethics of that in Section 4, the rule of no harm.
Take a second to read this incredibly powerful quote from the Prophet Muhammad's farewell sermon. "Hurt no one, so that no one may hurt you. Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and that he will indeed reckon your deeds." This serves as the ultimate ethical anchor for society. It's the core rule of no harming nor reciprocating harm. By strictly adhering to this, the entire framework of society fundamentally shifts to focus on deliberately increasing benefits and decreasing harms across the board.
And this wasn't just some nice sentiment. It was translated into a sacred trust of strict societal rules specifically designed to protect the vulnerable. During this very sermon, he established absolute equality regardless of race, explicitly stating no Arab is superior to a non-Arab and no white superior to a black, except in piety. He also waived all usury and interest to protect the vulnerable from economic exploitation, and he fiercely enshrined the absolute protection of human life and property. But honestly, how do you maintain this kind of justice in the face of brutal conflict? The answer is profound psychological resilience. The framework teaches you to deal with God, not people. If someone wrongs you, you're taught to repel evil with a deed that is better. When the prophet finally conquered Mecca and stood face to face with his former persecutors, he simply told them, "No blame upon you today," and let them go free. So the crucial takeaway here is that by dealing with God rather than people, you completely remove your ego's toxic need to aggressively defend itself. You are instantly freed from the endless cycle of revenge. And that brings us to our final part, Section 5, Jesus and Final Justice. This whole framework beautifully illustrates the theological harmony found in the Abrahamic tradition. In this view, all prophets are considered half-brothers who share one core religion of submission to God, even if their specific laws happen to differ. Jesus is deeply revered here as God's worshiper, his messenger, and his word cast into Mary. And tying back to that political prophecy we mentioned earlier, the profound belief is that as humanity struggles through the harsh trials of despotism, Jesus Christ will return at dawn to lead the prayer and establish that final khilafat of universal justice. It's seen as a massive, ultimate blessing from God to finally unite humanity. Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought. As we look at the chaotic state of the world today, and as we await that ultimate, universal justice, how are you going to balance the material and the spiritual in your own life? Are you going to let one side completely dominate the other, or will you strive to reach that dynamic summit of the mountain? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I will see you next time.